All right, folks, it's 6:01. Let's get the public hearing started here. Welcome. Today is November 1st, 2022, and it is now 6 p.m. My name is John Lake, Supervisor with the DEM Division of Marine Fisheries. I'm here tonight to officiate this hearing regarding the proposed amendments to the Rhode Island Marine Fisheries regulations on behalf of DEM Director Terry Gray. Please be advised that this hearing is being recorded and will be made available on the Division's webpage. With me today from the Division of Marine Fisheries are Nicole Costa, Peter Duhamel, Corinne Truesdale, and from the Director's Office, Molly Ogren. Tonight's hearing concerns proposed amendments to the following division regulations. Part 3, finfish. Part 5, lobster, crabs, and other crustaceans. Part 14, Summer Flounder Exemption Certificate Program, which were publicly noticed on October 17th, 2022, pursuant to the procedural requirements of Rhode Island General Law, Chapter 42-35, Administrative Procedures, and under the authority of Rhode Island General Law 42-17.1. The purpose of this hearing is to afford interested parties an opportunity to provide oral testimony, data, opinions, and/or arguments concerning the proposed rulemaking. For tonight's hearing, the following process will be observed. The division will provide a PowerPoint presentation summarizing each of the main proposals. Persons wishing to speak must raise their hand and be recognized by the hearing officer prior to speaking. Speakers must first state their name and/or affiliation for the record. This hearing is not a forum for discussing, debating, arguing, or otherwise having any dialogue. Any questions must be limited to clarifying questions only. A second comment may be made only after all other speakers have had an opportunity to speak. Once oral comments are complete, the hearing will conclude. Written comments are strongly encouraged and may be submitted until the end of the notice comment period, which is Thursday, November 17th. Division staff will be available to answer questions regarding any of the proposals. The record of this public hearing and comments will be provided to the Rhode Island Marine Fisheries Council for consideration at their meeting on November 28th, at which time the council will provide a recommendation to the director on each item. Please note, this council meeting was rescheduled from October 3rd. After the comment period has closed, the council meeting has taken place, the director will render his final decision. He has the option to file the rules and regulations with the Secretary of State as noticed, file the rules and regulations with minor changes, or not file the rule and consider renoticing with or without additional amendments. If filed, these rules and regulations become effective 20 days after filing and have the effect of law. Prior to hearing comments, the following exhibits are noted for the record. Exhibit 1 is a copy of the public notice proposed regulations that were filed with the Secretary of State on October 17th, and Exhibit 2 is a copy of the slides presented at tonight's hearing. No written comments have been provided up until this point. So without further ado, let's get to the slides. So once again, real quick, y'all are becoming familiar with our virtual participation metric. What we usually do is we'll go to folks that are in the audience first with comments, and then we'll go to folks online, and then we'll open it up to everyone as they come in. If you're online, please use the raise hand function on the Zoom. You'll see that on the reaction button down at the bottom of your screen. Once you are identified as to speak on the Zoom, you'll be unmuted one at a time, and then you can make your comment or question. After that, you'll be remuted. If you're off mute, please minimize background noise. So the first item up for comment is black sea bass commercial management. We have an industry proposal. The top shows our current management, and the bottom of it is an industry proposal which lessens the starting possession limits in the spring and increases them in the fall. Any comments on the black sea bass commercial management proposal? You, sir? You can go ahead.
Robert Brayman, fisherman out of Newport, Rhode Island. I just think you should do anything you can do to raise those limits. You get quota from someone else or somewhere else, you got to raise them. They're wiping the lobsters out. They want to do a lobster study, and they want settlement traps, and all the settlement you need is right in the stomach of those sea bass. You know, it's just, you gotta raise the limit.
Thanks.
Yeah, Al Eagles, commercial fishermen. Aren't the limits set by ASNFC, black sea bass?
They set the specifications for each state, and then we implement those specifications as well.
Yeah, so there's nothing in your authority to increase catch limits in the state?
We can alter our possession limits. We can raise them and lower them. We have the authority to do that. We do participate in the process to specify how much each state gets as their annual allocation, which is then divided into recreational and commercial. And sometimes sea bass is one that I think we'd have difficulty with. If some states do not use their full specification, their allocation, they might transfer to another state. That one, sea bass is likely one that we wouldn't get a transfer for, but you never know.
So what's the recent history on filling the quota, the annual quota for the black sea bass for commercial? Last few years, have we met the quota each year, filled it?
We have reached our annual quota for sea bass in the last few years.
Okay, so in regards to the slide, I agree with the proposal changes.
With the industry proposal?
Yeah.
Anybody online?
Would anybody on Zoom like to make a comment on commercial black sea bass? Just raise your hand. Don't see any hands.
All right. Moving on to SCUP, commercial management. So once again, you can see at the top the current management scheme for possession limits, and we do have one industry proposal which proposes to open the general category possession limit in the spring, May 1st, at going from 10,000 pounds per vessel per week to unlimited possession on general category SCUP. Floating fish traps already at unlimited. Any comments on SCUP commercial management? Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to support the industry proposal.
Anybody online?
No.
All right. Moving on to summer flounder commercial management. So we have two industry proposals for that. The first slide shows our current management scheme. Second slide here shows industry proposal 1 or 2. Proposal 1 looks to change the starting possession limit for summer flounder in the May 1st to September 15th period to 150 pounds per day. That's up from 100. Proposal 2 indicates that, proposes that we start the winter 1 period at 6,000 pounds per vessel by week if you're in the aggregated landing program. And then also to start the the summer and the fall period from 100 to 300 pounds today for those folks that have a fluke exemption certificate. If you do not have a fluke exemption certificate, you'd be limited to 200 pounds per day. Likewise, in the fall, start the season at 500 pounds per vessel day, up from 100 for those that have a fluke certificate. If you do not have a fluke exemption certificate, you'd still be limited to that 200 pounds. Any comments on summer flounder commercial management?
Yeah, increasing, if you went with the proposal 2, how would that fit with the allocation for the state, if you were going to increase it by that much?
Increase the starting possession limits?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to go from 2,000 to 6,000, but the other periods also increase. It looks to me like you're going to have quite a large increase in your allocation.
Well, to clarify, we will have projections for the council, but I can tell you that this year we are behind on our fluke, catching the quota of fluke, and that's likely why these two industry proposals are saying that we should start a little higher, because we're actually behind right now on fluke. So
In that case, I would support industry proposal number 2.
All right, anybody online?
No hands.
All right. Moving on then, the next species up for comment is Spanish mackerel. So by way of background, we are now considered a de minimis state for Spanish mackerel regulations at the ASMFC. As a de minimis state, part of the fishery management plan is to implement the recreational measures and commercial measures you see on the screen. We are proposing a minimum size of 14 inches, open all year with a bag limit of 15 fish per day for rec. Also, it should be noted that all recreationally caught fish must be landed with the head and fins intact. That's for identification purposes. The commercial measures would allow a 14-inch fish. The season would go from March 1st till the end of February, so year-round, but on a March 1st start. And the possession limit would be 3,500 pounds per vessel day. Any comments on Spanish mackerel? Al?
Yeah, under the de minimis status, I assume there are no regulations in place at this point?
We have no regulations for Spanish mackerel, correct?
And, so these proposed regulations, is this from DEM?
It's from the fishery management plan that was developed at ASMFC.
So no input from industry on this?
We did bring it out to workshop and had some comments from a few of the rec guys that showed up 2-3 weeks ago. But beyond that, we had no commercial comments on it.
And any idea on the status of the fishery with landings for Spanish mackerel in the state currently?
I don't know exactly, but my understanding is that they are low and they're a bycatch species, if anything. Couple million pounds.
Probably used to getting in the trap, just box them or something here and there.
Okay, I'm not gonna make a recommendation either way, then leave it up to the department.
Anyone online want to make a comment on Spanish mackerel recreational and commercial measures?
No hands.
All right. Okay, so the next item up for comment is recreational striped bass, a gaffing prohibition. So a little background here. Normally you'd see striped bass at our next hearing cycle. This one needs to be in place by January 1. That's why you're seeing it tonight. And it is part of the Amendment 7 to the Striped Bass FMP, which was adopted in May 2022 by the board. There are a few issues in Amendment 7, management triggers, recreational release mortality, a stock rebuilding plan, and addressing conservation equivalency. We are addressing our proposed rule addresses recreational release mortality. Effectively, it would ban the use of a gaff when recreational fishing for striped bass. You'd have to use a net. It is important to note that in this regulation, we do not consider spear fishing gaffing. So you could still use a spear or a powerhead. You cannot, well, it's defined here, you can read it for yourself, but can't use a gaff to grab the fish out of the water by our proposed rule for recreational.
How about taking them out of the water? When they lift that 50-pound fish or whatever it is out of the water and then they release it, a lot of times, I mean, I've seen 20 or 30 of them floating on the surface this year.
Sure, that barotrauma and
breathe.
also just the stress of the fight, that could get them. We're addressing gaffing right now, so we already put a
Unhook
circle
them in the water and then not even take them out for the picture.
Al?
Yeah, I'd have to go along with that proposal.
And was that support, Bob, or?
Yeah, I get it.
Anybody online?
No hands.
One question.
Sure.
Is there gonna be any penalty go along with that if convicted?
It would fall under our general penalty clause that we have in our regulations.
So that's something that's gonna have to be seen to observe to be enforced.
It's similar to circle hook, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so the next item up for comment is the valid dates for lobster trap tags. So, by way of background, we have different dates for trap tags being effective when the season starts. Federal tags start in May. State tags start in June, May 1st, June 1st. We've heard some comment from industry that it might help compliance as well as confusion to have them both start on the same start date. While as the state, we cannot change the federal start date of May 1st, we are proposing that all state tags become effective on from June 1st to May 1st, and then last until April 30th of the next year. Any comment on the trap tag dates?
Yeah, I was originally against this proposal, but after speaking to Scott about it, quite a few conversations, I can see where the division's point of view from, so I'll support it this time.
I'm against it. I think we should leave it the way it is. Personally, where I fish it, it's dangerous from May to June. You lose gear and you're gonna lose brand new tags you put in the traps. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that was my original thought also, when I talked to Scott about it, I was against it also, but it sounded to me like, it was gonna go through no matter what, so. To simplify it for, the division, I'm gonna withdraw my disagreement with it, but I do agree with Bob, that was my original argument about it. That time of the year is really tough to, get trap tags in the
Spring
traps.
storms.
But, guys are fishing year round. And I don't see anybody really arguing against it, so I assume it will probably fly. I mean, that's what the division wants, right?
Not necessarily. We've actually, this came from other folks that just wanted them to start at the same time, so.
Well, if you're not really set in stone on doing it, I'm gonna change my opinion and say I'd rather keep it at June 1, go along with what Bobby says, because that was my original argument, to keep it that way. It's basically for the guys who fish all year round, it started early. That's a really tough time to be putting tags in. For the simple reason is not only the storms, but just the general condition of the weather at that time of the year, so. I'm gonna take away my proposal to endorse it, not endorse it. See what that flies.
Anyone online? All right, that brings us to our final item up for comment, and that is has to do with the Summer Flounder Exemption Certificate Program. So you see the regulation up there. I'm not going to read through the whole thing. What we are proposing here is to allow a summer flounder exemption certificate to be transferred to another entity that is holding it while it is not attached to a vessel. Right now, if you are in possession of a summer flounder exemption certificate, you have the option to have it active on your vessel and fish with it, or you can put it into what we call confirmation of certificate status, CCS. Right now, while it is in CCS, you may not transfer it to another entity. So if you were to want to avail yourself of such a transaction, you would have to put it on a boat, transfer it to the other person, and then, what happens to the boat? Likely a paper tiger situation. So we are proposing no need to make people jump through hoops, basically to allow someone who is holding a certificate that is not attached to a vessel, if it is in a confirmation of certificate status, to be transferred to another entity. One important caveat here, the same rules apply to as if you were transferring it if it was attached to a vessel, except that if it is transferred while CCS, it is still on the 5-year clock for the confirmation of certificate status. One of the rules in place now says you may only shelve a permit for 5 years before you must apply to a vessel. Any comments on summer flounder exemption?
Yeah, what's the time frame if you wanted to transfer it to another entity?
So You can hold it as long as you want. If you put it into, I'm not sure I understand, but if you put it into confirmation of certificate status,
Right.
you
How long does it
5
take?
years, you can hold it like that
How
for
long
5
does it
years.
take the process to get out of being held, to put it, transfer it to another entity?
So the transaction, we have an application, it's accomplished down in Galilee. It's very quick. I mean, probably the slowdown would be, arranging the brokers and everything.
Yeah, well, the
Our
reason,
process is easy.
the reason I ask is because when you do a transfer like that with a federal permit, by law, they have 30 days to do the transfer. And a lot of times they take the 30 days. Just-
We review the paperwork. If everything's in place, it can be accomplished that day. It's not a cumbersome process like the federal permit.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone online? All right. So since there are no further comments to be presented at this time, on behalf of the Department of Environmental Management, I would like to thank you for attending and for your comments. At this time, I declare this public hearing to be closed. Again, please be reminded that the public comment period will conclude at 4 p.m. on Thursday, November 17th. Thanks.
Thank you very
Do
much.
those federal, I mean, not federal, but the fluke